Welcome to the Darkstream, Vox Day, voxday.net, and of course, unauthorized.tv. Hello, Blitzkrieg Bear, Coyote Jack, and Aha Moments say that audio and video are good. Thank you, guys. Good to know. Just want to start with a shout out to the Baltimore Ravens, especially their coach John Harbaugh. I was thinking, gee, this is a really good game. It's tight. I kind of felt like, do I want to push this off until tomorrow? And then they came out of halftime and promptly scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, thereby allowing me to, in good conscience, abandon the game and show up for Stupid Question Day. So thank you, Ravens defense. Anyhow, without further ado, we've already got a bunch of questions sent in. Not a bunch, but a reasonable number of questions from the Social Galactic. Yeah, it's the divisional round, Blitzkrieg Bear, so there's probably not going to be a massive turnout for this tonight. But you know what? It's going to be up and unauthorized. People can watch it tomorrow. Not a problem. What is your favorite saint? I was a little confused by that one because, on the one hand, not being Catholic, I don't tend to even know who the saints are. On the other hand, I have read at least some of the lives of the saints, so I was thinking I should be able to remember some of this. And then I realized I actually do have a favorite saint because one of my favorite philosophers is also a saint, so I would say Saint Thomas Aquinas. I have no idea what he's the saint of, but he's definitely my favorite saint, especially if you've read Summa Helvetica. Then you can see that it was heavily influenced by the Summa Theologica, written by Saint Thomas Aquinas. Big Chad Mungus asks, what do you do for a living? Well, I do a lot of things. Mostly I oversee operations for Unauthorized, for Castalia. I dabble a bit here and there. I do some consulting, sell a few books here and there. We get by. In the current economy, you don't really want to be doing just one thing. I highly recommend that everybody in this day and age, even if you've got a good, solid job that takes up 40, 50 hours a week, it's important to have multiple sources of income so that if one stream is interrupted, you can emphasize the other ones. I realize that's not necessarily possible for everyone, but it's a goal that everyone should have. Will Social Galactic ever get direct messages as a feature? Yes, and I believe it will probably come late fall, early winter this year would be my best guess. I know some of the devs want to do that, and so I expect that they'll find a way to work it into the schedule. So right now, just so you know, the main focus and the primary focus for the devs is the new Castalia Library store, because that's obviously where we derive a good part of the funds for the operation, as it were. And it's also the I think area of the various operations that are most easily scaled. There's a tremendous demand for deluxe books. We will soon have the ability to produce a lot more. So that's really the main area of focus. But improving the improving unauthorized is probably the second priority. Unfortunately, like today, we had another setback for the bindery. Um, the rounding and backing machine, which is the one that was dropped, although I don't think the problem was it was dropped. We got a whole bunch of book blocks in, and uh, you know, we made sure that the end papers fit the specification and all this stuff, and then the thing basically just tried to eat the book. So I've had it with trying to get this machine to work. I think we're just going to have to replace it. Um, so you know it shouldn't add too much additional time to before we're fully operational, but it's got to be done. Um, it's just one constant battle after another. Fortunately, we're up for it. I know people are really impatient to get their Iliads and Odysseys, but you know, unless unless people want us to not round and back the books, um, you know. Uh, Swedish Trash Panda says Castelia Bookmaker Machine Company one. Yeah, we really don't want to do that. Um, have you retired from truck driving? I just keep it in my back pocket. I wouldn't say that I'm retired. You know, uh, I'm certainly available when called upon. Um, I just haven't been called upon very recently. So, uh, what do you think is the best path for a writer today with his first book that 100% does not fit the mainstream narrative? Well, first of all, it doesn't matter whether your book fits the mainstream narrative or not. You're not going to get signed to get published by a mainstream publisher, most of whom are really, really struggling right now. It's been really remarkable to see the difference in the way that publishers react now when we contact them and say, hey, we'd like to see about getting the rights to this book or that book. It used to be difficult to even talk to people. Forget them, uh, and that's even before they have any idea who you are. You know, and now they're like, will someone give us some money for something? Is there anything else you want? You know? Um, so I think that self-publishing is absolutely the way to go. Unfortunately, Amazon has all but killed the ebook market. So, just throwing an ebook up on Kindle Unlimited is not going to do much for you. Um, the most important thing for a writer these days is that you're writing for your own personal reason. If you're writing as a way to make money, you're wasting your time. You should do something else. So since you're not focused on the money, which you shouldn't be, um, then what I would recommend is that you start a Substack and see what kind of core audience you can attract. The rule of thumb is that if you have 10,000 supporters, 10,000 fans, um, you can probably make enough money to live on it. That's just it's an approximation, um, and obviously a free subscriber on Substack is not it's only the first step. But the point is you need to build up an audience. In the past, you used to have the publisher hand you an audience. Well, the publishers can't even do that today anymore. They don't have that kind of swing. They don't have that kind of influence. They don't have the distribution in the bookstores, et cetera, et cetera. So what you have to do is you have to build your own audience. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I stream, why I do the Darkstream. It's the reason that I set up the Sigma Game Substack. Is for there to be a central place for people who are interested in that particular topic and in that particular book to um, find it, to know that it exists. The biggest problem that you face as a writer or anything in the creative arts, music or comics or any of this stuff, um, even technology to a certain extent, is people don't know who you are. You know, I mean, it's kind of funny because sometimes people, talk about me as if I'm well known, but I guarantee you that if you went and asked 99% of the people in your life, or if you asked 100 people in your life who I am, one person would know who I am and one other person would vaguely have some idea. And so, um, the world has changed, and relying on the old ways of doing things just do not work. So, best path, figure out how to build your core audience and deliver to them. What is the best strategy for balancing a disciplined routine in life while also making time to branch out and try new things? Well, obviously, schedule your try new things time. First you need to understand whether you're a morning person or a night person. Any strategy that you come up with that isn't based realistically on that is going to fail. Then you have to figure out what your priorities are. Write them down. Don't just, like for me, uh, writing is important, but it's not a top priority, like writing books and stuff. Um, I consider the blog to be a top priority. You'll notice it's very, very seldom that 9 a.m. East Coast time arrives without a post somewhere, or without a post on VP. You know, maybe I don't get 4 posts up. Maybe I don't get the text episode up on ArcTunes. Maybe I don't even work out. Heck, there's days when I forget to eat lunch. But the one thing that I will always do is get a post or two up, um, because that's what maintains the momentum of the community. You um, and that's one thing that I can't stress enough in relation to the previous question is you have to do something every single day. It doesn't matter whether you're a YouTuber or if you're on Substack or if you've got your own blog. You have to put something up every single day. Usually it's better to do more than one. I think Fandom Pulse, they often have like 8 things a day up because as a general thing, you got to do that. Um, and so, uh, figure out what your priorities are, schedule them, and focus on doing hitting the priorities. Um, I don't execute anywhere near as well as I'd like. I would estimate I'm at about 25 to 30% efficient. I could be much, much more efficient. I don't know why I'm not, you know, but um, it's what it is. Would you be opposed to training a large language model on all of your text material using to write new blogs? Well, I don't think I'd be very interested in using it to write new blogs, mostly because I'm very unimpressed with the performance of AI so far. But no, I'm not opposed to that. If somebody wanted to train um, an AI on my writing, I wouldn't have any objection. I think it'd be quite interesting. Um, which blogs do you read regularly? The ones that are linked on my site. You know, I mean, you can tell which news sites I read just by looking at the links that I provide. I read the Daily Mail. I read that's kind of my figure out what the mainstream thinks. Um, I read Russia Today. I read the Global Times. I read Japan Today. I read. Um, I always check Poll, of course, since Poll is always right. Um, and then Anonymous Conservative, and uh, and then the Chinese diplomatic releases. So that kind of gives me a general idea of where things are, more or less. So, did you play Marathon? Very, very little. Um, and if so, did you enjoy it? I thought it was a really poor imitation of Doom. I did not particularly enjoy it. I did, of course, think that the music was excellent. Um, you may not be aware, but uh, Paul Sebastian, uh, and he did the music for that. My bandmate in Psychosonic. Um, so some of the music was kind of funny. It was funny hearing it because it was mostly, not mostly, but a fair amount of it was stuff that we uh, had toyed around with using and rejected for Psychosonic. So that was interesting. Um, let's see here. Um, if you had to move to America and become a farmer, what state and what animal, crop, or tree would you pick? I'd go Minnesota, maple, walnut, Highland cows, and chickens. You shouldn't go to Minnesota, and I would not go to Minnesota. Um, the government there is insane. It's crazy leftist, and about the only thing it has going for it is attractive and now increasingly overweight blonde women. Um, I think that Idaho is probably optimal, um, even still. Although I'm sure they're getting tired of um, you know Republicans from California um, and so forth. But I would also, I mean, I don't know about the farm thing because I don't think it's particularly. I don't know how it is for farmland, but the Dakotas are also a pretty good option. So, in terms of what animal or crop, I mean, Highland cows sounds good. Um, I think if we get a cow, I think there'll be beef cows and so forth. Um, Chickens are obvious, and so we'll as far as trees, you just want trees that you want fruit trees if you can. We've got like I don't know 14, 15 fruit trees, and we're gonna plant probably double that many this spring. So apples are great. You want stuff that rapidly produces inexpensive calories. Stuff that you can eat and the animals can eat. Um, Sam says the Dakotas are great and super overlooked with regards to out of staters moving in. Yeah, they're all going to Idaho. um, Highland cows are not only adorable, they're really quite tasty. I've had some Highland cattle sausage, and it's some of the best sausage I've ever had. Have you done a recent animal census of your environs? And if so, how many new critters did you find? No, I try to avoid doing that. Um, I figure the best way to not get into conflict with my wife is to religiously maintain an active disinterest in the number of animals we have. So, um, as far as I know, we've got the three Ridgebacks. Um, I don't really uh, think a whole lot about the other animals, although I am regularly updated on the doings of the International Horse of Mystery. So, um, he's quite the character, and so pretty much every day there's some interesting update on that. Let's see here. Article posted on Social Galactic contends boys should have an initiation into manhood, but fathers aren't the best for this. Agree and do sports count? I don't agree that boys should have an initiation into manhood. You know, almost all the almost all the groups that practice initiation into manhood uh, do not treat them like men afterwards. At least not these days. You know, I mean, if you're a Jewish kid and you do your bar mitzvah, you're not treated like a man afterwards. Maybe they let you read something in the synagogue, but you don't start working a regular job and paying taxes and getting married and all that sort of thing. You know, it's. I personally think it's. I think initiation rites are pagan primitive nonsense. Just my opinion. Um, Sports do not count, but sports are very, very important if you're going to learn how to be successful as a man, because sports are probably the most effective way for boys and young men to learn about the sociosexual hierarchy, which for the boys, it's just a social hierarchy. It's not that I've been thinking a lot about this per se. I've been literally working on the book. So, I was recently um, addressing that in part because on the new Substack, I was asked by someone, how do we help, how do we help boys understand the hierarchy? And the thing is that I can speak from personal experience. If you have a boy who's playing on a football team, it takes him about 30 seconds to understand the social hierarchy. He knows who the alpha is. He knows who the bravos are. He knows who the deltas are. He knows who the gammas are. He knows all those things. He just doesn't have a label for them. The minute that you tell him, hey, there's these labels, you can ask your boy, okay, so who's the alpha on your hockey team? He knows. Um, so sports are extremely important, and it's not an accident that we tend to hear, uh, sports ball, you know, and all that sort of thing from people who are pretty obviously gammas. You know, gammas hate and fear sports. In the event that a gamma actually does play sports, it's almost certainly going to be a individual sport. And so what we can conclude from that is that if you want to, if you want to teach your boys not to be gammas, get them into sports, a team sport, a physical sport, and you know that will help them. If nothing else, they will learn what it takes to earn male respect, which is something that you know all men crave in some capacity. The funny, I was starting running back in high school football, but not the alpha on the team, but high on the hierarchy did not translate to the basketball team. Of course not, because a different sport, a different team, is a different social order. You know, that's why I repeatedly point out that um, the hierarchy is fractal, And to within the organization, it is situational. So that's why you can theoretically have an alpha in one context who finds himself in an omega role. In fact, it was really interesting. I've been reading a book that I really would like to acquire for the Castelli Library. It's a French book, a book written in French by an Italian about uh, a very high-ranking aide who is very close to Vladimir Putin. So it's basically nonfiction in the guise of fiction because I mean everybody knows who the specific person is the fictional character and all this sort of thing. And what was fascinating was uh, the way that they talked about how shocking it is to people who are the unquestioned alphas in their political order. So you've got these people who are the absolute top dogs of their entire country, and then they go to New York for some international UN thing, and suddenly they're complete nobodies. You know, um, and so the situational aspect does matter, but it's always important to remember that the core behavioral pattern is going to remain. You know, I mean, my behavioral pattern is obviously uh, my core behavioral pattern is obviously very, very sigma. But you know, I've had to learn how to adapt and learn how to behave as a situational delta on my soccer team. You I get along much better with the players and stuff when I take that role. When I succeed in keeping my behavioral pattern under control and behaving in accordance with my situational role. It's not really that complicated. It's People make it more complicated than it is. This kind of stuff. Um, this kind of stuff is instinctive. This kind of stuff is natural. You know, one thing that I thought was interesting. In fact, I was what I was writing about today was um, the way in which the media tries to portray uh, alpha male and beta male as being unscientific. Pseudoscientific is a word. It's pseudoscientific. But the funny thing is, it's directly evolved. It's not just directly evolved, it's directly taken from zoological and psychological science beginning in the 1920s. It's it what they call now the dominance hierarchy used to be pecking order. In fact, it was coined in the 1920s, and it was called pecking order after, of course, observing chicken flock behavior. But it was also called peck order and peck order with a dash. And it wasn't until the 50s that uh, that pecking order completely won out. Um, and then alpha male was first utilized, I believe, in the 1960s and was actually used in reference to humans for the first time in 1992. And so, the idea that the alpha male concept applied to humans is pseudoscientific is total nonsense and is ignorant of scientific history. Thank you. The Gray Man sends the first super chat. He says, just chatting because I'm here and caffeinated in both chats. Strong performance, Gray Man. Very good. Respect. Um, Powers at Bear says, we have 4 roosters now, and they instantly knew who top dog was. Yeah, no question. Um, Dan points out the irony. The same people who consider us smart monkeys think that dominance hierarchies don't apply to humans. That's kind of funny. Um, Carnaby says gammas would learn faster if we poke them right in the eyeball like chickens do to each other. Yeah, and if they're weak, peck them to death. Oh, wait, that's not good. Yeah, we shouldn't do that. Um, yeah, we should not base our uh, human dominance hierarchies on poultry behavioral patterns. I think that'd be bad. Um, yeah, the whole myth of the alpha male thing. That's it's because people are very uncomfortable with accepting the reality of the social sexual hierarchy for diverse reasons. You know, women don't like it. A lot of men don't like it, and the kind of men who don't like it are exactly the kind of people who are the smart boys who will uh, write entire scientific papers that boil down to actually. So, what's your take on Steam versus the Epic Store? I don't have one. I have a Steam account. I don't think I've used it for 6 years, 7 years, um, and I've never used the Epic Store. So, do you foresee any major shifts in the PC gaming industry coming down the pike? Yes, I think that all of the first of all, I think that there's going to be a big implosion just because uh, all of the combination of debt and consolidation means that the bigger games are going to keep getting bigger and dumber and less entertaining. They're going to continually push, like Ubisoft suggested, they're going to continually push towards um, game as a service rather than a product. Um, the gray man's correct. I use good old games, otherwise known as GOG. Um, in fact, the new game I most recently played was the reskinning of the original Wizardry, which is clever and is done. I give it a 5 out of 10. I like the idea better than I like the execution. Um, but you know, it's still a fun game because gameplay is gameplay. Um, so yeah, there'll be major shifts coming. I think that we're going to see more and more indies coming up, um, and you know, releasing the games as their own independent platforms. Um, you know, that company that I was hired by briefly, Nordeus, they sold out to Take Two about 2 years ago. Um, but you know, they essentially had their own platform, and now they didn't execute. They never really managed to produce a second game, despite numerous efforts. But um, I suggest that part of the reason is that they didn't actually use the designer that they hired. Um, but um, you know, it's a viable approach. You know, in fact, I actually just spoke to a artist today. Maybe you recall Game Brain. I don't know if you've seen that. We still have it up there, but we're going to we're going to get Game Brain reskinned. We're going to come out with some other versions of it besides the stuff on computer games. Um, and actually, you know, one of the things that we'd like to do is we'd like to be able to hire people to write questions for it. You know, we tried that before. um, you know, we had like 12 volunteers who volunteered to write questions, and I think one of them ever wrote um, more than like 5 questions. It was kind of funny. And no, I think somebody did at least 10. You know, it is kind of remarkable, to be honest, how, and I'm saying this with no no disrespect for anybody who's volunteered and then found out that they didn't really want to do it or whatever. But um, you know, it, if you want to learn how to do things and make a difference and all that sort of stuff, volunteer and then actually do it. You know, um, it's very important and it's very effective. You know, I mean, like I wrote, I don't know how many, I wrote over 1,000 questions for the thing. So I know exactly what's involved. It's not really that much work, but um, I would have thought that the subject matter experts would leap at that sort of thing, but say la vie. Um, let's see, change the battery. Actually, I think I have a battery here. I'm going to turn the camera off here for a second, and then let's see if we can do this. So hold on. I think this might work. We'll give it a whirl. Oh, there we go. Excellent. So we're back. Um, Mark D says, "Congrats for the launch of Sigma Game." Thank you, both for the super chat and for the congratulations. I first discovered you through your old game blog, which I believe is Alpha Game. Thanks. You're welcome, and glad you're here on Unauthorized. Um, that's how it works. Is just you know one thing. Um, you know, dip your toe in, learn to make a difference. I mean, one of the biggest problems we have on the right is that um, we don't really have a good uh, ethic for helping others, volunteering. We're pretty good about financial support for stuff. You know, I mean, obviously this community is phenomenal. I mean, this community is literally legendary in the tech world for it. Um, but it is a little bit strange that it's it's actually easier to raise a couple $100,000 in a few days than it is to find two people to write a few trivia questions in a day, or something equally simple. You know, one of the reasons why the left manages to outperform despite its retardery, if there's so many people that will just show up for stupid, unimportant, unpaid stuff. You know, um, and you can ask others. I mean, I do put my money where my mouth is. I attempt to help out, um, you know, my peers as much as I can. It's that's one of the things that's really nice about having a partner like Owen, um, guys like Cod, Chuck Dixon, Razorfist, etc. Those are all people who understand the importance of working together. And so, if you approach everything as a job, if everything that you do requires you know make what you are accustomed to making when you uh, are at your 9 to 5 or something, you're never going to contribute anything in that regard. And I'm not saying that everybody can or everybody should. It's just a bit remarkable to um, when you do try to do something in that way and find out that it just doesn't work very well. Now, obviously, AI could probably help tremendously. In fact, now that we're talking about it, that's actually something I should try. Is I wonder how well AI would write trivia questions for specific things. So we'll see. Um, Carnaby says, all we're missing is a good code of conduct. That's the problem. That's the problem. Obviously, code of conduct. Al Dente, I think he's going back to the AI thing. I can scrape your blog for LLM training. I'm assuming that's different MMA, but we'll probably get timed out. Can you provide an API? No. Or shared drive file with all of your blogs? Well, I'm not going to share a drive with you, but what I'm pretty sure what we can do is we can probably give you put it up on an FTP site, and then give you a link to a giant file that you could download. So I'll talk to the devs about it. We'll see what we can do. And then obviously for the books, I can make a similar file. I presume you want actually, for the books, most of them, you can just go to, I think libegen.is, or I think, is it called Anna's Archive? I think pretty much all my books are available on the pirate sites. So just grab what you need. Anything that you feel like you're missing, go ahead. But I mean, between the between the Alpha Game blog, VP, and all the books, you should have plenty, I would think. Rachel says volunteers start out impatient and fizzle. Yeah, well, that's what's so sort of confusing. Before you go, could we get a play of that? No, I'm not playing any songs tonight. I'd have to actually figure out where I have it first, but I'll play it in a Darkstream this coming week. Filter by EPUB. Exactly. Would you consider writing a book countering the arguments and claims of the so-called manosphere? Absolutely not. Or a Voxiversity on the topic. I don't know what you even mean by that. The so-called manosphere is, I mean, are you talking about men going their own way? Are you talking about pickup artists? Are you talking about the Christian game? I mean, I don't know even what that means. So that's why I don't intend to do a Voxiversity. I've already done one on men going their own way. So, I mean, honestly, since I shut down Alpha Game, I haven't really paid much attention, if any, to the so-called manosphere, especially because, at least from my perspective, most of the more interesting contributors are no longer writing. I mean, Roosh is not there. Royce's not there. Those are the two big ones. Athol is gone, or at least his blog's been gone for a long time. I mean, who even is there? I mean, the guys who are running around like, I am a Sigma male, and if you want to know how a Sigma male writes a poem to the true love of his life, let me give you an example. Bing trivia questions about Vox. Okay, let's check this out here. I'll see what we have here. Okay, ad source, web page. Pop this in here, see what we get. Okay, here we go. Later. Here's some trivia questions related to, what was the name of the band? Okay. What was the name of the biblical video game that Beale and Lundstedt released? Okay, so that would be Psychosonic. The name of the biblical video game would be The War in Heaven. What's the name of the comic book series created based on the QAnon conspiracy theory? That would be Alt Hero Q. What's the name of the animation style that Beale's series Unicorn Warriors Eternal uses, which is inspired by old cartoons like Betty Boop and Popeye? What? I mean, I think this shows us some of the fundamental problems with AI. That's hilarious. Um, Anyhow, so let's move on. Um, Nuclear llama. At this point, what do you think is the most likely new front in World War III? Uh, I would say the Northern Front in Israel. Even with Ukraine and Israel, it still seems like the current situation is more Sitzkrieg than anything else. I think that the the people in Gaza would massively disagree with you. Um, I, I mean, how can you describe 500,000 plus casualties in Ukraine alone as Sitzkrieg? How can you describe, the complete occupation of the northern half of Gaza and up to 25,000 people dead as Sitzkrieg? You know, just because the war is not affecting you personally doesn't mean that it's not happening, that it's not, vicious and tragic. So, um, anyhow, uh, Taiwan doesn't appear to be heating up at the moment, but that could change at any time. Um, Obviously, North Korea is uh, getting a bit frisky, um, and the Europeans are frankly getting insane. Um, you know, the Germans talking about how they're going to prepare to fight Russia in 3 years. It's total madness. So, um, but the obvious and most likely new front is related to the Red Sea, which means something with Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, etc. The one thing that is clear is that the Israel front is much, much more important to the USA than Ukraine is. And so I think it's pretty clear that um, that Ukraine is going to be more or less abandoned this year. So, um, given global economics and supply chain fragility, what would be a good business to start or buy in America over the coming years? Uh, I think something related to plumbing, that would probably be even better than something related to electricity. Electricity, you're too fundamentally dependent on the grid and external parties, most of them government. Um, Plumbing, water, sewage. A lot of people are getting into food. So, um, anyhow, that's what I would look at. Um, any sort of significant repairs, but people don't like to pay much for repairs. So, um, probably more in the plumbing, water, and sewage area. Carnaby says, how much does China's lack of actual combat experience matter? Not at all. Sure, they can make stuff, but they haven't been punched in the nose. Totally irrelevant. Uh, in addition to playing the new Booster Patrol stuff this week, one thing I'm hoping to do is to deliver the analysis of the Taiwan war game, which we really need to get done before there's an actual war. Um, and this actually relates to what I've been working on with that, because not to give away too much here, but the fundamental problem, and this, is obvious, so it's not giving anything away. When you're talking about a war, you're not talking about a battle. Plenty of countries lose catastrophic battles and go on to win the war. Think about the Romans and Cannae. You know, the Romans lost entire legions at Cannae, and then they trained up new legions and defeated, drove Hannibal back to Africa, followed him to Africa, and destroyed the city. So, what matters in war is the ability to replace your equipment. It doesn't matter if China goes out and gets its entire navy sunk, because if it does, then it will build a new navy because it can. The US, if it loses even a pair of carriers, suddenly has its abilities significantly restricted for the rest of the war because it cannot replace a single carrier in sufficient time to get it into the action. So, I mean, we're seeing that play out in Ukraine. The only reason that things have taken so long in Ukraine is that Ukraine has been propped up by the entire industrial West. Ironic Keyboard points out Russia in World War II lost entire armies. Yeah, exactly. It was really frustrating for the Germans because they had believed that there were something like 44 divisions. They knew they had destroyed 38 of them, and they were still facing another 64. They got pretty sarcastic about that. So war is not about tactics, and it's not even about strategies, and I would say it's not even about geopolitics, which is how people like to analyze it. What it's really fundamentally about, what modern war is fundamentally about is a combination of demographics and industrial capacity. Russia alone produces as much steel as the United States. China produces something like 70 times more steel than the US. So, you sink their entire navy. Congratulations. They're going to have even newer, better stuff coming at you 6 months later. So, in peacetime, we have too much red tape to deal with. In a crisis, that goes away. Yeah, no, it doesn't. Not in the United States. The whole system is fundamentally broken. Yeah. Anyhow, why does one always leave the bookstore with way more books than one had initially planned to buy? Because they multiply in your hands. What is your bench press PR since becoming a half centenarian? I have no idea. I haven't maxed. I just don't max anymore. Not so much because it would be depressing, but mostly because I don't want to injure my shoulder. I think, I can do, I know that I can do at least 6 reps at 225. So, you can calculate my max from that. What is your favorite poem and why? My favorite poem is either The Heart, a Tautology, which is a ridiculous poem written by a friend of mine, or lines inscribed upon a skull now used as a goblet. That's not the exact title, but it's something like that by Lord Byron. Um, I quite like that. I quite like that poem. Um, is there a general history of Japan you would recommend? 100%. I recommend the six-volume A History of Japan, Cambridge University Press. Um, let's just say hold that thought. Um, with boomers dying off, would restoring a 60s muscle car be a good or bad investment? Um, of your time? Uh, you know, I would say that if it's an area of interest for you, uh, why not go for it? I don't think you should think about it in investment terms. I think you should think about it in terms of whether it's something that you care about. How do you manage your time and projects? Uh, Ad hoc, like always. Considering that it took me like 7 years to write a Sea of Skulls, I'm probably not your best person to ask about time management and project management. Um, any particular philosophies, tools, or advice you'd recommend to make the most effective use of time? Figure out what your maximum priorities are. Make sure you get that done. At least make sure you get it done. Um, you know, it's funny because I tend to think of my 30s as being, from a career business accomplishment sense, uh, basically being a wasted decade. But ironically, it turns out one thing that I was doing, just because I kind of enjoyed it, was, you know, blogging every day. And that turned out to be the most significant and important thing that I did in that time related to my career. So go figure. Are there wars that don't involve attrition? Yeah, 100%. You know, I mean, look at all the countries that um, Germany conquered. I mean, the biggest problem is that uh, the Western strategy always involves, um, well, the enemy is going to be disappointed, and so they're going to overthrow their government. It's the most retarded military strategy in the world, but it can kind of work. That's essentially what Hitler did. Send in some troops, overwhelm the army, get the central government to quit. Boom, boom, boom. You know, it works when you're dealing with small, weak countries that have no intention of fighting wars. It doesn't work so well when you run up against a continental power. There was once talk of psychosonic remixes and boosters. Is that still possible? Well, John actually has a psychosonic booster done. We need either I or Paul need to record the vocals if we're going to get that one out. Um, but actually, uh, I can I can't guarantee it, but I can tell you that there will probably be some new psychosonic, possibly as soon as this year. So, um, and there will also be a lot more Booster Patrol stuff now that my voice has finally come back and I can actually start thinking about doing some vocals again. Um, it's just been incredible how, like, whatever these cold viruses are, they just like linger. I mean, this is the first time I can talk. I think this is the second time that I've been able to reach an hour without, you know, coughing uncontrollably. So, is Sherlock Holmes a Sigma? Um, no, uh, he's not. And I'm not going to talk about the AI populated war game yet. I'm going to do a stream on it, and I will have some stuff to show you already. So, anyhow, hope you enjoyed Stupid Question Day. We will. I'll be back probably Monday night. And like I said, this week we'll introduce the new Booster Patrol song, and we will hopefully get to the Taiwan war game analysis. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the rest of the NFL playoff games. I'm Vox Day, and this is the Darkstream.